travel to the far reaches of the Star Wars universe, including the remote outer rim world of Batuu from Galaxy's Edge, with this unique treasury of in-world space tales. Featuring lush illustrations, this beautiful collection illustrates 9 original fairy tales, myths, and fables, passed down through generations, spanning millennia, carried from planet to planet. These are the legends that bind the galaxy together.
Hello, and welcome to Padawan Library, the Star Wars junior novel podcast. I'm Levi Paratic. With me, as always, is Tim May.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
And this week, we're not very enthusiastic. This book hasn't got us very enthusiastic. No spoilers.
I don't know if I'm down on the book, really. It's just not a particularly exciting week. We'll talk about it in the segment, but this is a bit of a calm before the storm. We got 4 Galaxies of Fear books coming up in a row.
Yes, that'll be exciting stuff.
That'll be a nice big project. So
we're on the day this is released is the day after the Triple Force Friday toys have all been revealed. So
we can't talk about that.
We can't talk about that
because it's now the day before that. But I was scouring the internet for Star Wars news, and all I saw people talking about, and I'll get in. We'll talk about this a little bit, I guess. Whatever. Mm-hmm. All I saw people talking about is there's a new book by Bob Iger.
Okay.
That's his memoir of being the head of Disney or whatever. I saw it in the store. Mm-hmm. I was actually at a bookstore earlier today, and I saw it. But I don't remember the name. It's funny. It's it's The Ride of a Lifetime. That's what it's called.
Oh my god.
And there's a bunch of controversy because he says a bunch of stuff in the book that we already knew, which is that Lucas had 3 treatments for a trilogy that they wound up not using. And he essentially says he feels like he handled the situation poorly, and they got off to a rockier... The relationship between Disney and George Lucas got off to a rockier start than it needed to, because he didn't communicate more directly about how much of an intention they had to use those treatments in the book.
Well, that must have been what prompted George to call them white slavers. So,
that was maybe he shouldn't have gone that far. Whatever. Obviously, he's basically fine with them at this point. It feels like I don't think he cares much for the new trilogy, but he was very supportive of Solo, and he seems very supportive of the Mandalorian. So. What are you going to do?
I saw a headline, actually, before we started recording this. It was just a headline, and it said, Steve Jobs personally called Bob Iger to tell him Iron Man 2 sucked.
Yeah, I saw that, too. That's also from the book, from what I gathered.
That's what I was assuming when you told me about that.
I immediately, when I saw that headline, I was like, well, that's the best thing Steve Jobs has ever done. That's really funny. So, but yeah, well, I know it, and actually, what's interesting is that for a long time there was often rumors that Apple and Disney would merge. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's in the cards these days, but
no, they're both too
big,
large.
Yeah, at least they were separate types of corporations, and now they're crossing into each other's fields. Well, Disney doesn't cross it. Isn't really
Apple's getting into the entertainment field, so that's
so. Disney can't own the morning show, Levi? Is that what you're saying?
Apparently,
yes. The morning show, for those of you who don't know, is the flagship series, which basically just looks like, the newsroom, but with the morning show for the Apple service that's coming.
Yeah.
Too many services. Well, don't you think?
Too many. I think so.
Like, I mean, we're obviously going to subscribe to Disney Plus, if only because we have to with this podcast.
Right.
It's just Mandalorian's content that we need to
right.
talk about.
But look at like some of this like services, like staples of certain services. Like Mad Men is leaving Netflix. Friends is leaving Netflix.
Oh, Mad Men is. Shit.
Yeah, they're looking for a new streaming home apparently.
Well, it's not like Lionsgate's going to have their own streaming service, so like. They'll probably wind up on Hulu or something.
Every studio is going to have their own streaming service because all of the NBC stuff is going to go to whatever. Is it Peacock?
Yeah, but Lionsgate does not have enough of a library to actually launch a streaming service. Like, I think like Lionsgate, Sony, like there's going to be some of the studios do not have their own. Like, won't have their own. Like, it's going to wind up being Warner, Universal, and Disney, which are the big three.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
I don't know. I think you have... Mad Men, I mean, that'll just end up on Hulu or something, or Amazon. Or
yeah, probably.
I mean, whatever, you know. I have the Blu-ray, so.
But, like, Friends is going to, like, the new HBO streaming service.
Well, the HBO streaming service is the... HBO Max is not even the actual HBO... I don't know what they're thinking. This is the Warner Media Service, is HBO Max. I don't know, like that's diluting the HBO brand. Like, HBO should be a channel on the Warner service.
I agree.
Like, the HBO brand, it's like, oh, we've got Friends reruns on HBO. That doesn't work together. Those are not two things that make sense together.
No, it's already bad enough. Like, HBO already has, like, 3 streaming services, like, already. So, HBO Max, HBO Go,
Which
HBO Now. Yeah, like,
now
it's all...
the standalone. I don't know. HBO Max is a separate thing, though. From what I gather, it's going to be, like, it'll include HBO, like, the full, like, HBO. But, like, I just think using the HBO branding, like, that's just diluting the brand. This is the network of The Sopranos. And you're going to be like, oh, well, our big flagship announcement is that we have Friends. Like, okay, like, who cares?
Speaking of The Sopranos, I talked to this with a friend of probably future friend of the show, Dan Kenham.
Oh yeah,
and I saw a list. The Guardian put out the top 100 shows of the 21st century. Have you seen this?
I haven't. I would guess Sopranos is high.
Sopranos is number 1.
Yes!
All right. Now, where do you think Lost is? This is where things get...
15.
Keep going.
Higher or lower?
Higher.
Oh, 10?
No, I meant lower, I guess. You know, bigger number.
Oh, 25.
Mm-mm. Keep going.
Oh, my God. 52.
Keep going.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding you.
Of the 21st century? So just the last...
Of the 21st century, so the past 20 years.
This is insane. 100?
No, it's low. It's 76.
That's terrible.
I agree.
Like, and okay, if we're talking all time, that's a vaguely dispensable position. Like, but just the last 20 years, like, I know it's supposedly the golden age of television and all this, but like, yeah, where was Mad Men? Was it top 5?
Mad Men was number 3. Okay. Mad Men was up there. 2, Breaking Bad was up there.
2 was The Wire?
Yeah, I think so.
So Mad Men was above Breaking Bad. That I need to know.
Yes, it was above Breaking Bad. Mad Men was number 3.
Yes.
But the biggest, Lost was so freaking low, and like they had.
Did they have the leftovers on the list?
They had The Leftovers, which was lower than Lost.
Oh, even worse.
Yeah. Now, good things that were on the list. Show Me a Hero was on the list. Oscar Isaac's Show Me a Hero.
That's a miniseries.
On HBO. I know. The Daily Show with Jon Stewart was on the damn list.
So there's just any kind of show.
Any kind of show, and a whole bunch of British shows.
And also, The Daily Show started before 2000. 1999 is when that
they
show
counted
started.
They counted it.
I watched that show when I was in elementary school.
Same. I watched it every night. I loved it.
I love The Daily Show. If you're doing all shows, it should be in the top 10, I guess. But
if you're going to include The Daily Show, then you have to include the Colbert Report.
That's not on there?
That's not on there.
Oh.
Jon Stewart's on there. Jon Stewart's the only late night guy on there. And now I've never watched this show, and no shots at Donald Glover, but they put Atlanta at number 10.
That show's 2 seasons in.
Well, it's apparently a masterpiece.
That show is really good.
I've heard nothing but good things.
But number 10 after 2 seasons, I feel like currently airing shows should not have qualified.
I agree. Let me see if I can find.
We'll
this
talk
list
about
again.
this list a little bit, and then we'll get into the book. We don't have any Star Wars topics, guys. So
yeah, Triple Force Friday. Well,
we'll talk about that next week.
Yes. Well, because it's a week. The reveal of the toys is a week before actual Triple Force Friday. All right.
Oh
so,
yeah. Oh man, We'll have some sort of fun content for that. I'll figure out something. Maybe I'll go to the store and shoot some video or something.
Yeah, I need to go to the store too. At least. Okay, so here, I'll give you the top 10. Sopranos number 1.
Okay, correct.
The Wire number 2.
I'm fine with it.
Mad Men number 3.
Good.
The Thick of It number 4.
Well,
remember,
this is a British list, then,
British, right? So,
that's a pretty big show. That's the guy that created Veep. Is a British show.
Breaking Bad number 5.
Okay.
The UK Office number 6.
Correct. You are a loser if you don't like that show.
I've never watched it.
That show's incredible. The fact with a dripping disdain in your voice made me furious just now.
I've never watched it, so I'll just treat it with
Ricky Gervais, but that show's great.
Game of Thrones number 7.
Fuck off.
Fleabag.
And by the way, I've
8.
not seen the end of Game of Thrones. I'm not one of these loser fans that wants them to remake it, but I mean, it was never a top 10 show. That's what I mean.
Mm-hmm. No better than Lost. Get out of here.
Yeah,
Peep Show number 9.
You said Fleabag number 8?
Yeah.
I need to watch that. I've heard it's great.
Well, it's apparently a top 10 show. And then Atlanta, number 10.
So there's lots of British stuff on here, too.
Yeah, but they put 30 Rock at number 12. I love 30 Rock, but I don't know if... They put it above Curb Your Enthusiasm.
30 Rock's better than Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Okay, all right. Well, I've never watched...
I love Curb. No shots at Curb. But 30 Rock is...
All right, let me pull up...
30 Rock's not better than Seinfeld. But it's better than Curb.
Well, they don't include Seinfeld because it's not past 20...
Yeah, obviously. Because Curb is the same creator as Seinfeld. Yeah. Levi.
Yeah. Well, number 20, OJ, Made in America.
That's a movie.
I agree. That's a movie. So is, Planet Earth and all of...
Planet Earth's a miniseries.
But still,
and I guess technically the OJ doc is a miniseries, but I think they won an Oscar for Best Documentary Feature. It's a movie.
What sickens me is I know people love this show. Number 36, The Great British Bake Off. There is no way that show is better than Lost. Not in the slightest.
The problem is you cannot compare these different kinds of shows. If I'm just saying what's my favorite show of all time, what show brought me the most joy in my life, it's probably Late Night with Conan O'Brien. I don't think it's the best TV show of all time, although it is great. I'm not but yeah.
And here's a show that I know people love this show as well. So Lost, I'm sorry, I said Lost is 76. Lost is 71. It's not as big of a travesty being at 76.
Close
it's
enough.
Still way too freaking low.
Once you get past 20, it doesn't matter the order.
Yeah, but they put Shameless above it, and I've watched some of Shameless, and it's not better than Lost.
It's not better. I said it's a fine show. That Lost is a masterpiece.
Now they put The Good Place in front of it, which I've watched the first season of The Good Place.
Over yet. There's one more season. Wait to put that on the list. I love The Good Place.
They don't care. Who is this guy? Who wrote this?
It's probably a staff list, I would guess.
All right, hang on. Let me see here.
It's probably voted on by multiple people.
Okay, it is by 5 people. Kate Abbott, Hannah J. Davies, Gwynlyn Mumford, Phil Harrison, and Jack Seal. So
all of you British critics that I'm not
and
that
you guys you're all on my list.
Oh, don't come on.
So
you're a ridiculous person. It is just a list. I agree about Lost being too low. Are there any other egregiously low Well, here's the thing. If they counted The Daily Show, is it any show that aired episodes this century, or is it just shows that started this century and they just gave Daily Show a pass?
I guess 99's the cutoff. Oh, Buffy's on here, 97.
Because I was going to say, that aired part of it. And, so it's obviously, because I was going to say Sopranos started in 99, too.
Yeah.
Is Freaks and Geeks on the list?
Freaks and Geeks is on the list. I do know it's that. I don't know where it's at. Oh, here it is, 78. And Buffy is 83, and they didn't include Angel.
Well, Angel is not a top 100 show.
But let's see.
Like Buffy, if you're going to include it, should be much higher.
Yeah, Band of Brothers, 68.
That's a great miniseries. But I don't think miniseries should count. I don't think talk shows should count. And honestly, it should really just be dramas and comedies in separate lists, too. Like, half hours and hours are so different. Clone Wars on the list?
No, Clone Wars is not on the list. There's actually no animated show. Well, South Park's on the list, and I think that's the only animated show on the list.
Really? That's whack.
Well, if you're going to include frickin' South Park, which started in, 97? Yeah. Where's The Simpsons?
The Simpsons. Well, but you could argue the best seasons of South Park are from the 21st century. Nobody would argue the best Simpsons are from... But...
Mild Star Wars reference here, bringing it back to Star Wars. Number 29, Spaced, Simon Pegg.
Spaced is great. That shows the Britishness of the list, and that's so high. I love that it's high, but
anyway, I love that show too, but...
I'm glad we went over this list. Check it out. Listen, there's lots of good TV shows. I'm kind of out on TV lately. I don't really watch TV anymore. I watch movies pretty much exclusively. But not because I don't like television, just because keeping up with all that.
There's too much.
It's stressful.
It's too much. There's too many streaming services. There's too many shows. We have no commonality anymore.
Like I watched so much television in college. You know me.
I know.
We knew each other at this time.
We did.
I would schedule my classes for a semester where I would have class on 2 or 3 days out of the week, and I would have the other days off. And on those days, I would watch full seasons of network shows. I'm talking sitcoms with 20+ episodes. I'm talking full seasons of Mad Men, that kind of thing. So it's like I love television, but for the most part, I'm out on TV.
I do remember asking, hey, you want to hang out this day? And you were just like, no, I'm watching Degrassi all day.
Oh, yeah, well, me and at the aforementioned Dan watched Degrassi, literally 10 seasons of Degrassi in 2 months during college. But, hey, I like television. But
television's great.
It's just hard for me to get... I mean, I'm watching ER right now, and that's basically on an episode-a-day basis, and ER is incredible, guys. By the way, is ER on the list? Because that show is still on.
Oh, I X'd out of the list. I don't think it was.
It should be. Okay, all right. Well, we've been blathering about this for 16 minutes. We got to get into the book, so we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about a very different kind of Star Wars book, Myths and Fables. So stay tuned, guys. Welcome back to Padawan Library. I'm Tim May, here as always with Levi Peretic.
Hola.
Alright, so today we got a kind of a laid-back episode. We're just going to talk about this recently published, I believe back in August, collection of short stories called Myths and Fables. It's by a writer named George Mann, British writer, I believe. He wrote a lot of Doctor Who stuff, so I feel like
he did.
British.
Yeah. This book was released as a tie-in with Galaxy's Edge. They're trying to push Galaxy's Edge on us, and the way they do it in this book is by having, this is a collection of short stories disguised as myths and fables, and 2 of the stories take place on Batuu. We'll get into that. Let's see, George Mann. He's primarily, this is his Wikipedia I'm reading, genre fiction. He's done anthologies known as the Solaris Book of New Science Fiction. Solaris, I believe, is a planet at some point mentioned in this book. Mann is the author of The Human Abstract, The Severed Man, novella and series, Time Hunter, and a lot of Doctor Who. And yeah, that's what he's done. This is his first Star Wars thing.
And we should mention the illustrator is a guy named, what's his name, Grant Griffin.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually he's the star of this book. The illustrations in this book are great.
They're really nice.
And
as from what I could find too, this is his first endeavor in Star Wars as well.
It seems like his career is relatively recent. Like he has, because it says about the artist in the back, it says that he's an illustrator working in games and publishing. He grew up outside of Austin, Texas, and did a stint in Denver, Colorado, where he got a BFA in illustration, and began his career freelancing in 2013. So he lives in Nicaragua now. That's where he works. So that's interesting. But but beautiful work. I assume these are kind of digital paintings.
Yeah, I would think so too. I mean, it's hard to say, but they look digital because they don't have that the like they have like the textures, but they seem like they were kind of like a digital kind of layering
texture.
Yeah,
which is fine. I'm not.
He does a very nice job, and I like to see him do more things. I also see here too. I should have just read about the author of George Mann. But George Mann is a Sunday's Times best-selling novelist and scriptwriter. He has loved Star Wars for about as long as he's been able to walk. He wishes he still had the Ewok Village action figure set he adored when he was a boy. He's the author of the Newbury and Holmes Victorian mystery series, as well as 4 novels about 1920s vigilante known as the Ghost. He's also written best-selling Doctor Who novels, New Adventures for Sherlock Holmes, and the supernatural series Witchwood. His comic book writing includes extensive work on Doctor Who, Dark Souls, Warhammer 40,000...
40K, baby.
40K, alright.
I don't care about that, but we're going to hear from people if I don't correct you.
Yeah. Newbury and Hobbs, and as well as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for young readers, Tim. This is our first mention of the Turtles, and you're a big turtle head.
I'm a big... Well, let's go down a turtle rabbit hole for a minute.
Okay.
A turtle hole? Alright, listen.
Let's go into the turtle shell. Let's go into the
Star
shell.
Wars... Here's the thing. Star Wars fans who feel some sort of sense of anger about Disney's acquisition of Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if they're also Turtle fans, because when Peter Laird, the co-creator of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, sold Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to Viacom, I believe in 2011 or something like that, it's just been a sad state of affairs for the multimedia franchise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles since Viacom took over. Listen, the IDW comic that the other co-creator, Kevin Eastman, oversees is very good. I'm putting that aside, but both cartoons they've done since then have been very bad, no matter what our friend of the show, Zachary T. Owen, thinks. He's wrong about it. Zachary T. Owen is a friend of ours. I apologize. But he's wrong. He thinks that the 2011 Nickelodeon Turtles cartoon is good. He's wrong about that. He's incorrect about it. Obviously, we've also gotten the Michael Bay movies. Very, very bad. So I'm hoping that one day there will be another good Turtles property that's outside the comics. But you know what? I've given up that hope. Whereas with Star Wars, there's always some interesting stuff happening. There's always something to like. Even if you're mad about a movie, there's another thing happening. If you're not looking forward to Rise of Skywalker, you probably are looking forward to The Mandalorian. We don't have that as Turtles fans, and I want Star Wars fans to feel that. So yeah.
As long as their boy Filoni's around, there's always things to look forward to.
I'm getting pretty excited about The Mandalorian, Levi.
Oh, I mean, me too. I'm probably more excited about that than anything.
I have no trepidation about it, which is what's amazing. It's the first time I've felt this way about a new Star Wars product since the sale, is that there is no trepidation. I'm just like, this is good. Well, I guess that was true with Rebels too, but Rebels felt lower stakes. This is the first huge production they've done where I'm just like, I'm looking forward to this unambiguously. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
And it's gonna and even if they do something that I think is dumb, nothing about it is gonna make me mad. I'm not going to be mad about it at any point.
Well, because it's not impacting our important characters either.
Yeah,
it's all new characters.
Even if I don't wind up liking it, even if I wind up being disappointed by it, I'm not going to be angry about it. And listen, I try not to be angry in general. I've really been trying to grow as a person and not get angry about movies and TV shows. Obviously, there's plenty of evidence on this podcast to the contrary. I just, but you got to play that up a little bit too. But Mandalorian's going to be cool, is what I'm saying.
It's going to be damn cool. And you know what? I haven't told you this story yet. The night after we recorded the Lost City of the Jedi episode, every time one of these Star Wars movies come out, I'm always excited for them, but I never fail to have a dream where I go to the movies and see the movie. So yes. I finally had the Rise of Skywalker dream. So in the dream, I went, I saw Rise of Skywalker, I came back, and you and I were going to record the show, and I realized I didn't remember anything about the movie because the movie put me to sleep. And I didn't know anything about the movie.
Don't put that in my head, Levi. This is a disaster.
And you were angry too because it answered none of the questions. JJ
I don't care
was just
that much about the questions. I had a very long conversation with our guest from last week, Dan, a couple days ago. We were just talking about The Last Jedi for literally 2.5 hours. We had a 2.5 hour conversation about The Last Jedi, which to me actually proves how, as a film, how good that movie is, that I can talk about that movie years later at this point, where I've been talking about that movie for, probably if you add up all the time, I talked about that movie for at least a week straight. And I can still find new ways to talk about it. It's wild. But anyway, I was talking about the thing that ties into Rise of Skywalker. We were saying, would you rather that Rian Johnson had considered more the shape of the trilogy when he was making this movie, and so that in the end the trilogy would make more sense thematically and it would be more coherent? Mm-hmm. Or would you rather he do what he did and just be like, I'm just going to make the best fucking movie I can make, and who cares about the bullshit baggage that I've been saddled with from The Force Awakens? And I was like, you know what? If I have to say, you know what, that trilogy is bullshit, but guess what? The Last Jedi fucks, I'm happy with that. And I said fucks, not sucks. It fucks. But anyway,
I agree with you, because out of all the movies, it's the most ambitious in trying to expand ideas. It's the first person who's trying to, of these new movies, who's trying to take the Force and not just make it this I don't want to say JJ made the Force hokey, but it's way more than just moving objects. He
wanted to so simplify it because he was so terrified of the idea of midichlorians or whatever. He didn't want to have any real philosophizing about the Force, which whatever. Who cares?
Well, he didn't want to. He didn't have to philosophize an original plot either. So, but
whatever.
We won't get into that now.
We're going to have so much time to talk about this in a few months when The Rise of Skywalker is released. We're going to review a book that takes place after The Last Jedi, right before that. So there's going to be hours of us talking about this stuff.
Well, not to rush this along, but I have a cat that needs to be at the vet in 50 minutes. So we have to.
We are going to rush it along because guess what? This book. And this is not about the quality of the book, and maybe we're going to have a kind of low opinion of the book, maybe we're going to have a high opinion. This book does not, there's not a lot of discussion that needs to be had. What we need to talk about is, first of all, the format of the book. It's short stories, and the short stories are written in the style of myths. So if you were like me, and you had collections of Greek myths, and King Arthur stories, and that kind of stuff as a kid, and you grew up with that, which I did, then this style of writing is very familiar to you. Even the book itself looks a lot like those anthologies that I had when I was a kid, Arthurian tales or Greek myths or Roman myths, which, the Roman myths are just rip-offs of the Greek myths, man. IP infringement, my guy. But anyway, so I grew up reading that stuff, so this was all very familiar to me. But it's also, I'll say this is very much the fantasy side of Star Wars because of the style of writing, which is very fairy tale-esque, right?
Mm-hmm. Very. So, it's very loose with names and continuity, lots of new planets.
I kind of like that, actually. In theory, I should love this book, is my point. This is, honestly, I think a very cool idea for a book. I just think that the stories are fairly hit or miss. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that too, and like, there's not always like morals to the story either. Some stories just like abruptly end, and you're just like, okay.
There's not. I would say this: if the story takes place on a planet that you've heard of, it's usually pretty interesting. If the story takes place on maybe they're not totally made up planets, maybe these planets exist, but if it takes place on an inconsequential planet, usually it just feels like a fairly generic space fantasy story.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily feel like it's Star Wars.
But I will say this, there are some of the stories that do feel like Star Wars, so let's jump in and let's talk about some of these stories.
And the first one, we're probably going to talk about this one, is the very first story. This is The Knight and the Dragon, and to basically summarize this, this is this takes place in Tatooine. We got Tusken Raiders. They were looking for a home. They found a home. Were there for a couple months, but then they awoken the dragon nearby. Not a dragon. This is a dragon.
Yeah, listen, dragons are unfortunately no longer canon.
Yes.
Sorry, Jude. Or no,
but,
I'm sorry. Sorry, Dave. Dave Wolverton.
Yes, Dave Wolverton. Now, but this dragon has a name.
Sorry, young wizard.
This dragon has a name, and it's Crate. Like, as in, is that how would you say
the Crate Dragon? Yeah.
The Crate Dragon. Now, continuity here on Wikipedia says Crate Dragon is a species of dragon.
Right.
But this treats it as if the story, as in the dragon's name itself is Crate. So anyway, the dragon formulates a plan that he wants to get rid of these Tusken Raiders, but he's going to do it slowly and painfully. So he starts by taking their livestock one at a time, and then he starts to take their children and their women and slaughtering them all like someone else we know.
And so what? Yes, indeed. And so what they wind up doing is they wind up going into town and kidnapping people to essentially use as bait to satisfy the Crate Dragon. Kidnapping people from... And when this is happening, it stops the Crate Dragon from coming. And they're like, okay, cool, like whatever. We're not sacrificing our own people. And then a warrior shows up.
And sees what's going on.
And he challenges the Crate Dragon, and there's a cool face-off between them, and then and at some point he kind of comes to an understanding with the Crate Dragon, and like all the Tusken Raiders are cheering. They're like, "Oh, this guy's our hero," and this dude's just, what does he say? It's like actually hard.
Hang on, I'm trying to look for it now because like they say he like battled the dragon for like an hour.
Oh, here we are. I found it.
Yeah, okay.
This is what happens. Right. Tentative at first, and then suddenly rapturous, the villagers began to cheer and hoot in celebration, for they saw that the old knight had cast a spell upon the dragon to quiet its mind, and in doing so, he had finally freed them from its reign of terror. But the knight himself was not so easily placated, and he silenced the villagers with a look more fearsome than even that of the dragon. With a gesture, he bade the dragon to rise to its full height, towering over him, glowering down at the assembled villagers. He took a step forward, and the dragon followed in kind, subject to his every whim, so mesmerized was it by his spell. The dragon Crate is now under my thrall, and as such will do only my bidding. No longer shall you suffer from its nightly visits. The crowd began to cheer once more, but the old knight ushered them to silence again. Yet you have wronged the people of the town, for you have taken your pain and made it theirs. This too shall cease, for if you ever raid the settlements of others, I shall learn of it, and I shall return with this dragon, and your village shall be destroyed. Hard as hell.
So, I mean, they never name him, but, I mean, it's obviously Obi-Wan.
It's Obi-Wan, and the Crate Dragon, this goes back all the way. The sound you hear when Obi-Wan first shows up in A New Hope is supposed to be the Crate Dragon, and Lucas eventually, in the Blu-ray cut, he changed it to sound like the dragon that he rides in Revenge of the Sith. But you know,
See, I was always under the understanding that it was Obi-Wan making the noise.
No. This is actually, I believe it's in one of the novelization. I think it's in the novelization that it's called a Krayt Dragon, but I might be wrong about that. But I believe it's an old. It's been like that idea is that's a Krayt Dragon has been around for a very long time. So this was a cool story. This starting the book off, I was very excited. I was like,
yeah, I know this was a great way to start.
Awesome. And then the next story is called "The Droid with a Heart," and I have complex feelings about this story because this is a story about General Grievous. Very cool.
Yes,
that part is very cool. And basically, it's about General Grievous, how he didn't care about the droid armies that he sent in, and they all would get slaughtered. And it's basically it's a story about this other droid who winds up.
He's one of these duck-billed looking droids. What do they call him?
I don't know,
but something else this story does that I thought was interesting was that it suggests, I mean, not that you can say that any of this is canon, but I was always under the understanding that, Grievous was in, an accident, which is what made him mostly machine, but this presents him as someone who is obsessed with surgery and, becoming more machine than man, becoming, the perfect balance between those two.
I'm curious about the canonicity of this. I don't care that much, but there were always two separate stories about how Grievous became how he is. There's the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars as a very direct explanation, and there's another explanation in James Luceno's Labyrinth of Evil, the book. Mm-hmm. And these are obviously neither of those are canon now, so in the Disney timeline. But I don't think this book is of questionable canonicity, I believe. So because even the intro kind of is it doesn't matter if this happened really this way or whatever. So. It's kind of like that Legends of Luke Skywalker book that we haven't covered.
Right. Which so this, the way they present Grievous is the fact that he's trying to become this perfect amalgamation of man and machine. This something that's in between. It's something that he's striving for. They present him as though he can't relate, because of that he can't relate to organic beings or the droid beings that he's surrounded by, and because of that he's just a big old bully and he just doesn't mind killing droids. So there's a tactical droid who is given orders to carry out an assault on the Republic, and they know that a bunch of droids are going to die, and this droid, by his own decision, against his programming, disobeys orders, sends the droids elsewhere, and Grievous finds out about this. Grievous cuts the guy to shreds, but the idea, the other droids, the other battle droids, knew that this droid had done this and had spread the stories of this tactical droid for generation to generation. So it says here, from battle droids to droidicas, astromechs to protocol droids, all had heard of the tactical droid's bravery and inspired many others to stand up against oppression. In due course, the tactical droid became celebrated in the honor rolls of the Republic as a fallen soldier that had showed great compassion for its comrades, even though, unlike the general who had forever aspired to be like it, it never really had a heart.
So, I mean, listen, we've talked about droids and how I feel about this general thing. I think this story is more compelling on that front than others. This reminded me a lot of a Clone Wars episode with the kind of general, the Kurtz from Apocalypse Now style character, Jedi general guy. I don't know if you've seen those episodes, but it reminded me kind of that. But that was about clones, which I just find clones a much more compelling metaphor for this kind of stuff than the droids. But
right, I think I like the end idea though, that this one droid was myth among droids. Yeah,
I wish there was more stuff like that, where it's in the book that's more because that's a story that that is very much about how it's being passed down, and there's a little bit of that in some of the other stories, but a lot of them just kind of read regular short stories with a veneer of kind of mythic tone.
Right. And so the first story was great. Second story was all right, I'm on board with this.
The third story, Vengeful Waves. We don't need to go over this in any sort of detail. This was some bullshit about a water planet that, with two races, the Nautilans and the Anselmi, who are at war, and then they find some sort of tentative peace at the end. whoop-de-fucking-do. There's no characters in the goddamn story. It's just, like, talks about the two sides in very vague terms. It's not good. Moving on.
The Wanderer. This story here, we're not going to discuss it, but I will bring this story back up later because one of the stories ties into this story.
The Dark Wraith, yes.
Yes. This story takes place on a brand new planet called Kurosha, and there is on Kurosha, before there was a city on Kurosha that was destroyed by the Dark Wraith, but that was years before, and what the Wanderer is... Well, the picture makes it out to be that this is like an old-timey medieval knight. He's got a shield, but he's got a lightsaber in one hand. And essentially what happens is the city is going to be destroyed. And 3 separate times, this Jedi wandered in and saved the town. And then he disappeared again. And, he was a myth among the people. You got anything else to say about this story?
No, I didn't mind this. It was fine. I like it. I liked it better than the Water People story. But
yeah, I did too.
I'm
trying to remember what he does exactly. I know at one point there's like a giant tidal wave that he stops. He takes on pirates at one point, and then let's see, what was his other act of bravery? Some hive creatures, like they were digging into the planet and these terrible bug creatures came out and he led them all back into the planet. But that's it.
Alright, and then the next story is the big tie-in to Galaxy's Edge, really, is the Black Spire.
Right, and I want to talk about this story.
I actually like this story. I want to point this out. I think it's a good, short story.
Right. I feel like the ending is a little abrupt. There's one little element about the story I found a little funny. So this is the story about a family. There's 4 children, 3 girls, 1 boy, and their mother. And their mother, they live on the outskirts of Black Spire Outpost on Batuu. And these kids, they just go out and they play all day while their mother does their chores, has some alone time to herself. And one day the kids wander off a little too far, somewhere where their mother told them not to go, and they play hide and seek. And the one sister finds her other sisters, but they can't find their brother, and they can't find him anywhere, so they go home and they tell their mother. They were hoping he was going to be at home, but instead he's not. So their mother has to assume the worst, and that is that he was captured by slavers, and that slavery is legal on Batuu because it is a lawless place. So here's some Batuu news, people. If you go to Batuu, watch your back so you're not sold into slavery, because there's slavery on Batuu.
Yeah, well, hey, it is at Disneyland.
We can't say younglings, but we can have slaves, so...
The youngling thing needs to stop. Has that stopped yet?
I have no clue. If we ever get there, we'll find out. Maybe
go back and listen to our whole archive if you want an explanation.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I guess you're right. We shouldn't expect anything less than Disney. They are white slavers, and they're anti-union ideals.
That's true.
That's very much slavery. Meanwhile, they gross $1 billion at every movie they make. And they don't share that with anybody. So anyway, one of the sisters decides she's going to go back into the town and see if she can't find her brother, and she doesn't come back, so they assume the worst for her. And then the other sister says she's going to do the same thing. She doesn't come back. So finally, the youngest girl, she is all alone. She can't bear to face her mother. She ends up hanging... Anya, yes, her name is Anya, and she goes into a little hut, like a little playhouse that she has, and this leads to a bearded man in a brown robe paying a visit to her, and at one point he does say to her, and this made me think that they were implying that this is another bearded brown-robed Jedi.
Yes.
And what does he say to her? He says, "Oh, I mean you no harm," so implying a certain bearded brown-robed Jedi, just like he said in A New Hope. Anyway, he carves a wooden dagger for her. and she decides she is going to go into town and confront Sampa Grot, who is this slaver. And on the way, she picks up a piece. She finds along the road a piece of petrified wood from the Black Spire. She sticks it in her pocket. She goes to where the slaver is. She sees him, and then she decides to go back to his house, where she hides under his bed. And then waits for the guy to fall asleep, and she pulls out her dagger, and she then uses the piece of petrified wood to change her voice, like a voice changer. That was the one thing about this story I found a little silly.
Yeah, that's
and
a
then
little goofy.
Yeah, and she says, "I'm an assassin. I'm going to kill you unless you let those 3 kids you captured go."
And then she escapes before he can see her, and they wind up coming home, and everything's fine. I liked this story. I actually thought it was I liked the scene in the cave with the Jedi, or probably Obi-Wan, maybe Luke, I don't know. I thought this is the kind... if you're not going to have character... and that's not explicitly those characters, it could be just some random wise man. But if you're not going to have characters, I wish there was... my problem with a lot of the non-kind of more directly tied into the universe thing is they did not have characters. Specifically that water planet thing. There were no characters. It was just this broad kind of, here's 2 sides of whatever. So, the next story is one of my favorites in the book, actually, I'll say. It's called Gaze of Stone.
This one was good.
And
I did like this one.
This one's about, there's a stone statue of a Twi'lek on Moraband. We're on Moraband right now. And it's been there for 1,000 years or more, and we find out that we find out about what's the story behind this statue. And there was a young Twi'lek that was born on Ryloth who was very antisocial. What's the character's name again? Where is it? I'll find you. Rye Nimbus. And so Rye Nimbus is a Twi'lek who was born on Ryloth, and he was very antisocial, and nobody could figure out what to do with him. His mother loved him, but didn't know he was kind of an angry kid. And then a guy named Darth Caldoth. He shows up, and he's like, "Hey, I know what I can do for your son." And the mother's like, "Oh, he seems to be a good guy," or whatever. And so he takes him. And then Darth Caldoth drops young Nimbus off on some sort of slave planet where he fights in gladiatorial combat for 7 years. And he forgets about his mother, he forgets about Darth Caldoth and everything. And then Darth Caldoth returns to collect his apprentice, and his apprentice hates him. That there's an adversarial relationship. That's how it goes with these Sith people. And so then they travel the galaxy looking... These Sith people. And they travel the galaxy looking for Sith artifacts and, the Sith things that you do. And so... at some point he starts to resent Caldoth because he feels like Caldoth is hoarding the best information, the best spells, the best everything for himself, and what's his name again? Nimbus.
Nimbus, yeah.
Nimbus is the last name. Rye Nimbus. At some point, Rye Nimbus is like, I know a spell that can turn him into stone. But guess who thought of that? Guess who thought of that first? Darth Caldoth, and he winds up fucking with the spell, and it winds up backfiring on my guy Rye, and he turns into stone, and look, he's right there. He's there on Moraband for everyone to see for all fucking time. Little Sith apprentice who got too big for his britches, and sometimes, when you look close enough, there's a single tear rolling down his cheek. A single tear. And I have to say, I really enjoyed this. This is what I want the whole book to be. Maybe I'm holding this book too accountable for that one story, which I really don't like, the third story. Because I mostly like the stories we've talked about so far, to be fair.
Right. Yeah, They're good. And I found out a little piece of information here because I wanted to see if Darth Kaldoth showed up anywhere else, and he does. It's in Dooku Lost Jedi, the audiobook you haven't listened to yet.
Oh, well, I
He's
will
mentioned.
be listening to it eventually.
And here's a little behind-the-scenes thing here. This is actually a quote from George Mann. He says, "There's a little Easter egg in Dooku. I talked to Kevin about the ancient Sith Lord I created for the story Gaze of Stone, Darth Kaldoth, and Kevin kindly put a reference to him in his work in the audiobook script. So there's a fair bit of cross-pollination going on there."
That's pretty cool. That is what you want to see out of stuff like this. So I appreciate that.
So yeah. And
I gotta say, this is what I'm gonna say. From this point forward, I don't really like any of the stories that much.
I want to talk about the Dark Wraith because
we'll talk about that.
That's the last important one. This next one, The Witch and the Wookiee. This is another one of those stories that might not be Star Wars. It could be any sort of fantasy thing. Basically, 3 pirates who stole a bunch of treasure. They're trying to hide some treasure, so they take it to this swamp planet where they think no one will find it, and they stumble upon a woman, and the woman has a bunch of treasure in her house, so being pirates, they're just like, well, we're going to steal her treasure too. And then out of nowhere, when they go to steal her treasure, a Wookiee comes out and beats them up. And then she's like, all right, you guys can go. And she had made them drink some broth. She had made some soup and made them drink the broth. And she's like, all right, you guys get out of my house. So these guys are like, oh, thank God we were let to live. That Wookiee could have killed us. And then they get back to their ship. And when they start touching their treasure, it turns to ash in their hands and starts materializing in the woman's house. The witch's house. And that's the story. That's it.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with it. It's just not a great story. To me, about half this book is. We'll talk at the end here, but anyway, the next story is the Dark Wraith, which you mentioned, which goes back to the planet Karosha. So, and the Baralic Sea, and we hear all about this Dark Wraith that was mentioned in what's that first story called?
The Night. The night or hang on I can
it's not the Wanderer.
The Wanderer. Yes, I'm the Wanderer. I run around and around and around.
Oh, this is a pretty chill episode.
It is a very chill episode. We're almost done. So.
Yeah, I know. Hey, it's wild. I'm like, whoa, this is going to be a short one. So yeah, this story. What was the specific thing you wanted to talk about this story?
Okay, well, this story is essentially a boogeyman story. Basically, an idea to tell your children, almost like Santa Claus. If you misbehave, the Dark Wraith is going to come for you. And the Dark Wraith is basically this guy who came into Creosha one day and just destroyed the town. Now, there's a lot of hints. There's a very fantasy-looking photo. Illustration here that looks vaguely like Darth Vader, and there's also talks of his breathing here. Yes. And so it's kind of implied it's Darth Vader. Granted, Darth Vader is not going around snatching up small children, but it's this idea of a fable to get children to behave. But what is interesting is, so they talk about, the city of Solace on Karosha was destroyed, and I would assume that it must have been destroyed by Darth Vader, judging by the description of him. People would have saw him and been like, oh my god, what the hell is that? And but there's also talk here that the Jedi who had saved them 3 times before, they were hoping that he would come and save them from the Dark Wraith. And my theory here is that the reason Vader destroyed the city was because of the Jedi. He had hunted the Jedi down, killed the Jedi, and then destroyed the city.
See, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, and I think that's pretty cool. I will say, structurally, this book should have opened with the Wanderer and closed with the Dark Wraith. Mm-hmm. There's another story after this that is whatever. I don't care about it.
It's the most whatever story.
It's called Chasing Ghosts. It's about a kind of a space pirate type character. listen, here's you want some Star Wars hot? You want a hot take? Star Wars? I don't need any more scoundrels in my life.
You want a hot take? I'll give you a hot take. I don't like the idea of scoundrel being like a profession.
Yeah,
in
that's
Star
I guess
Wars.
what I don't like. It's like I don't mind. Guess what? Han Solo was a smuggler. That's what he did for work. And yeah, he was a scoundrel in terms of his character. Like as a person, as his character was scoundrel-like. But it's not like he didn't like the way they're. I don't know. Yeah, I agree. Like I just don't know. I don't mind having criminal characters. I'm looking forward to The Mandalorian, which seems all about the skeeziest possible part of the galaxy. But I don't know. There's just a certain way, and this is something I rub up against in all aspects of my life. It's a certain way when there's kind of this like I hate jargon. And I hate like jargon that is so specific, and it's like, well, Han Solo, he was called a scoundrel at one point, so that means anybody with a profession akin to Han Solo's is now officially classified as a scoundrel. It's just like D&D bullshit, and like no shots at my friends who play D&D, no shots. But it's like I don't need to talk about all stories through the prism of the game mechanics, which is an annoying thing that lots of genre people do because they grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons and they don't fucking understand stories through any other context than fucking math. It's frustrating. This is a tangent. It's not that related to George Mann. No shots at George. But yeah, whatever. Okay.
So this story too, I'm going to summarize it. This scoundrel named Misook, which is I think a very stupid name because on paper it just looks like mistook. Like it just has,
but without
like,
the T, yeah,
without the T. I hated that name. He's being chased by a bounty hunter, and he's on Batu. He goes to Olga's Cantina. So when you're at Olga's Cantina, think of Misook. And basically he decides, I gotta shake this bounty hunter, so I'm gonna tell a fable of my own about this character I'm making up called Arquelle, and she's the most wanted scoundrel in all of the galaxy, and she has a price on her head so big you can buy a moon. And then he ends the story by saying, and 2 days ago she was in this very bar, and that, like, I'm chasing her. So everybody who listens to the story, including the bounty hunter, then decides, well, fuck you, Miss Hook. I'm going to go look for,
Arquelle,
whatever her... Araquelle, this fake person, and then Miss Hook's just like, see ya.
I actually don't want to be too hard on the story. I will say, like, it's fine, and I get why it's placed last, because it's a meta thing about the nature of storytelling and this specific style of storytelling and all that stuff. I understand. I just think that if there's two stories that tie into each other, and it would have been good bookends, and a fairly compelling idea, like, that's about, Vader hunting down Jedi, we might as well just wrap this into our kind of final thoughts about the book. If we sounded negative, I didn't actually mean to. I thought this was a pretty entertaining book to read. I had a decent time reading it. I'd say about half the stories are very strong, and about the other half are not even bad, just not that memorable or interesting. But I like the premise, and I wouldn't mind seeing other books in this style. I'd like to see a higher hit rate, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
So George Mann is actually a pretty talented writer. I think the prose, I think he gets the style of how you write this kind of thing pretty well down. He's obviously very professional. Has written lots of other media franchises and also his own stuff. So, and the artwork. Shout out again to Grant Griffin.
I would love to see him do more things.
I think they should. Guess what? He should have been hired to do the Rise of Skywalker poster instead of whatever Photoshop artist they got to do it. I love the artwork, and that actually I think raises it for me. So like, if I say about half the stories I really liked, half I didn't love, that normally I'd say maybe that's like a 6 out of 10, right? I'm going to bump this up to a 6 point. I'll bump it up to a 7 for the illustrations, because even though there's only one illustration per story, they're all really cool, and honestly, they're pretty iconic pieces of Star Wars artwork, in my view, already. So I want to give it some credit on that score. It's a beautifully produced book. And when you have nice illustrations, you want the you want the production to be nice. So I'm gonna go 7. That sounds higher maybe than how I expressed myself, but I'm gonna go 7 out of 10 midichlorians.
All right, I'm being a little harder on this book because this book is very fluffy to me. And that I've only described one other book as fluffy, and that was Guardians of the Whills. This book is not as good as Guardians of the Whills, and so far on this series, we have not found. Well, I haven't. I know you like Guardians of the Whills more than me, but like a new canon story that we love.
That's true.
Something we love as Jedi Apprentice.
We've got 2 coming up. We've got Cobalt Squadron, which is about Rose and Paige.
Right.
And we're big Rose fans, so maybe. And then we've got the new one, Spark of the Resistance, which we'll see how that is. But yeah.
Hopes are high. We'll see. The hunt for new canon, enjoyable new canon in the young readers, junior novels division of Star Wars. Because, we have canon books we like.
We talked
about Claudia Gray.
We talked
like
about
those.
Master and Apprentice. That's the best book we've read from this podcast. But that's not part of our purview, is what I'm saying.
Right. So in terms of canon, in the young readers junior novel division, the hunt is still on. 5 midichlorians for this book.
Okay, that's reasonable.
And
I really gave it a lot of credit for the illustrations, I have to say.
Yeah, I know you did. Which is completely understandable. These illustrations, fuck. All right, these illustrations rule. And I'm going to give it a 5, and I'm going to say my favorite character in the book, I'm going to flavor it, Darth Clodoth. He is the
pretty cool
true
character.
king of
Pretty cool character.
Yep.
So that's it, guys.
That's it.
A short episode today. You have a veterinarian's appointment very soon, so I'm going to do a very quick wrap up, and I'm going to say, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Padawan Library. Email us at padawanlibrary@gmail.com. Subscribe to our YouTube page. We might have some video content coming next week, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Rate, review, 5 stars only. You know the drill. And next week,
Galaxy of Fear, Eaten Alive.
We're gonna have a guest on that episode, so look forward to that. Big spooky month. That'll be a fun set of episodes. But in the meantime.
I just want a precursor. My cat is okay. This is just a routine checkup, so if you were concerned. All right.
Well, you're about to go out of town for a long time, so you got to get her checked out before that.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And until the books are due back.
Library is closed, baby!
Woo!
Aye.
Padawan Library is hosted and produced by Tim May and Levi Peretic. It is edited by Tim May. Our theme song is by the Astral Project. Our artwork is by Freddie Funbuns. Padawan Library is copyright 2019 by Tim May and Levi Peretic. All rights reserved.